Why? You're ignoring the only signal that actually matters. What if I told you that you're running from the only compass that can take you where you actually need to be? Fear isn't a manufacturing defect in your mind. It's not a bug in the system. It's the most sophisticated resource you have, and you're wasting it trying to silence it with positive affirmations and motivational playlists. The self-help industry sold you the idea that fear is the enemy, something to be eliminated, destroyed, overcome. But what if that narrative is exactly what keeps you stuck? Think about it. When was the last time you felt real fear? Not that social anxiety about posting something online. I'm talking about that chill down your spine. That feeling that you're about to cross a line there's no coming back from. That moment when every cell in your body screams at you to back off. That's exactly where the magic happens. But instead of paying attention, you run to the next motivational podcast telling you to feel the fear and do it anyway, as if it's just about ignoring the fire alarm and moving forward. The problem is we treat fear as noise when it's pure information. A study from the University of Minnesota showed that people who can differentiate between protective fear and limiting fear are 63% more likely to make decisions aligned with their long-term values. 63%. That's not nothing. But nobody teaches you how to make that distinction. They teach you to swallow fear, to pretend it doesn't exist, to medicate it with distraction and consumption. Here's the raw truth. Your fear is trying to show you exactly where you need to grow. It's not an obstacle in the path. It is the path. Every time you feel that tightness in your chest, that urge to run away, your nervous system is sending you precise coordinates. It's saying, here, this is where your real life is waiting for you. But you weren't trained to read this map. You were trained to tear it up and throw it away. Let me give you a concrete example. You're afraid to start that project? Perfect. That fear is showing you that this actually matters to you. If it didn't matter, you'd be indifferent. Fear only shows up when there's something valuable at stake. When you're afraid of a difficult conversation, it's not because you're weak. It's because that conversation has the power to change your life. Fear is proportional to potential impact. But there's a crucial detail here. Not every fear deserves to be followed. There's fear that expands you and fear that contracts you. The first pushes you into unknown territories where you can become more whole. The second pulls you back to the comfort zone disguised as safety. Learning the difference between these two is the most subversive skill you can develop, because nobody else is going to do this for you. So what's the fear you're avoiding right now? The one that wakes you up at 3 in the morning. The one you try to drown out with shows, social media, and whatever distraction is available. That fear has a message for you. And the more you ignore it, the louder it screams. Pause and breathe. What's the fear you're pretending not to feel right now? Drop it in the comments. How to transform fear into precise coordinates for your next version. Now that you understand fear isn't the villain of the story, let's get to what really matters. How to use this tool the right way. Because it's one thing to know that fear has valuable information, it's completely different to be able to extract that information without paralyzing yourself in the process. And this is exactly where most people get stuck. They recognize the fear, but they don't know what to do with it. They're trapped in that limbo between ignoring it and being consumed by it. First step. You need to stop judging the fear. Seriously, every time you feel fear and think, I shouldn't be feeling this, you're creating an extra layer of resistance that only makes everything worse. Fear isn't a character flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. It's an extremely refined sensor that detects changes in your internal and external environment. When you stop fighting it and start observing it with curiosity, something shifts. Here's a practical exercise that will seem too simple to work, but it works. Next time you feel fear, don't try to solve it immediately. Don't try to make it disappear. Just ask, what is this fear protecting? Because every fear is protecting something. It could be your self-esteem, your identity, your sense of control, your fear of rejection. When you identify what's being protected, you can have an honest conversation with that part of yourself. Researchers at the University of California discovered that people who name their emotions with precision reduce amygdala activity by up to 50%. This means that the simple act of putting words to what you're feeling already decreases the intensity of the fear response. But nobody teaches you this. They teach you to repress, not to name. They teach you to swallow, not to translate. Second step, differentiate fear from actual danger. Your brain can't make this distinction on its own because it evolved in an environment where most fears signaled real threats to survival. Today, you feel the same level of alert for public speaking as you would for encountering a lion in the savannah. Obviously, these two scenarios don't have the same level of risk, but your nervous system doesn't know that. So it's up to you to ask the questions: there's something here that can actually hurt me, or is it just discomfort? Discomfort is not danger. Let me repeat that because it's important. Discomfort is not danger. The confusion between the two keeps you trapped in a small, controlled, predictable life. You avoid discomfort thinking you're protecting yourself from danger, but you're actually protecting yourself from expansion. You're protecting yourself from life itself. Third step, use fear as a priority map. The things that scare you the most are usually the ones that matter most. If you have a to-do list and one of them gives you a knot in your stomach just thinking about it, start with that one. Not because you need to be brave, but because that's the only thing on the list that has the power to change your trajectory. The rest is just productive distraction, that feeling of being busy without actually moving forward. Here's the subversive part. You don't need to eliminate fear to act. You act with fear alongside you. It's your co-pilot, not your driver. When you understand this, everything changes. Because you stop waiting to feel ready, confident, brave. You act while trembling. And it's exactly in that trembling that transformation happens. What's the thing on your list that you're avoiding because it scares you? Comment below. And if this video is making sense, hit that like button. What if you're using fear to avoid exactly what you need to face? Let's talk about the dark side of all this, because if I don't, you're going to fall into the trap and won't even realize it. There's a way of using fear that doesn't liberate you, but imprisons you even more. And the personal development industry loves this version because it keeps you consuming content eternally without ever actually changing. It's when you transform fear into a sophisticated excuse. It works like this. You recognize the fear, you even talk about it. You post deep reflections on social media about how you're working through your fears. But when it's time to do something concrete, you back down. And you justify it by saying you're respecting your process, that you're preparing internally, that you need more therapy, more self-awareness, more clarity. This isn't wisdom. It's procrastination dressed up as spirituality. The truth nobody wants to hear is this: there comes a moment when you need to stop analyzing fear and start moving through it. There's no amount of journaling, meditation, or therapy that will do the work for you. These tools prepare you. Yes, they're valuable, but they don't replace action. And there are people who spend their entire lives preparing for a life that never comes. You know these people. Maybe you're one of them. They're always in the process of becoming, never being. Always almost ready, never ready. And fear functions as the perfect guard of this comfortable prison. Because while you're processing your fears, you don't have to risk anything. You don't have to fail. You don't have to be seen. You don't have to deal with the real consequences of a life lived intensely. A study from Stanford University showed that the difference between people who make significant changes and those who get stuck in loops of self-reflection isn't in their level of self-awareness. It's in their willingness to act even without guarantees. People who transform their lives don't wait to be certain. They act in uncertainty and learn along the way. This should bother you because it destroys the comfortable narrative that you need to be completely ready before you start. So how do you know if you're using fear as GPS or as an excuse? Simple. Look at the last 6 months. Did you identify fears? Probably yes. Did you talk about them? Probably yes. But did you act despite them? That's the question that hurts. Because if the answer is no, you're not using fear as a navigation tool. You're using it as an anchor. Here's what you can do now. Not tomorrow. Not after one more course. Choose one thing you're afraid to do that you know you need to do. Just one. It doesn't have to be the biggest. It can be small. It could be sending that message, starting that project, having that conversation. And you do it. Not perfectly. Not when you feel ready. You do it trembling, awkward, imperfect. And then you observe what happens. What's going to happen is this. The fear won't disappear, but you'll realize you can move even with it present. And that realization changes everything, because you stop waiting for courage to arrive and start building it through action. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's familiarity with it. It's knowing you can feel fear and not be controlled by it. This isn't cheap motivation. It's the difference between spending your life preparing to live and actually living, between mapping the territory and crossing it. Fear is going to be there anyway. The question is, will it be your GPS or your prison? When was the last time you acted despite fear? Share below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. How to reprogram your relationship with fear and wake up to your real life. Let's close this out with what actually matters, the reprogramming. Because you can have understood everything up to this point, you can have had powerful insights, but if you don't change the base programming running in the background of your mind, none of this will last. You'll go back to the same patterns, the same escapes, the same small life, and fear will continue being that monster under the bed keeping you awake, instead of being the alarm that wakes you up. The first thing you need to reprogram is the belief that there's a future state where you won't feel fear anymore. There isn't. Give up on that fantasy right now. People who live extraordinary lives don't stop feeling fear. They just develop a different relationship with it. They understand that fear is a sign they're growing, that they're failing. When you don't feel fear anymore, it's not because you evolved. It's because you stopped taking risks. Think about the most significant moments of your life. The ones that really transformed you. I bet all of them came accompanied by fear. The move to a new city, the breakup, the difficult conversation, the risky project. Fear was there, screaming, begging you to back down. And you went anyway. Not because you were brave, but because something bigger than fear was pulling you forward. It was your real life calling you. Here's the secret the personal development industry doesn't want you to know. You already have everything you need. You don't need one more course, one more book, one more certification. You need brutal honesty with yourself. You need to stop pretending you don't know what to do, because you do know. Fear has already shown you. That thing you're avoiding, that conversation you're postponing, that dream you're locking in the basement of your mind. You know exactly what it is. Researchers at Harvard University discovered that most people, at the end of their lives, don't regret the things they did that went wrong. They regret the things they didn't do because of fear. Let that sink in. You won't regret having tried and failed. You'll regret having let fear decide your life for you, having reached the end and realized you lived the life fear chose, not the one you wanted. So here's the final exercise, the only one that really matters. Every day, for 1 week, do one thing that scares you. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be small. Send that message. Post that content. Start that conversation. Take the first step on that project. And observe. Observe how fear keeps showing up, but loses strength. Observe how you start building evidence that you can do hard things. Observe how your life starts to expand. Fear is not your enemy. It never was. It's the messenger delivering the coordinates to your next version. But if you kill the messenger every time it appears, you'll never get where you need to be. You'll keep going in circles, in the same comfort zone, with the same conversations, the same patterns, the same life. And there's one last thing that needs to be said. This isn't about becoming someone different. It's about stopping hiding from who you already are. Fear shows you the places where you still haven't allowed yourself to exist completely. The spaces where you're contorting yourself to fit expectations that aren't yours. Using fear as GPS doesn't transform you into another person. It transforms you into the person you always were when nobody was watching. Your real life is on the other side of that fear you're avoiding. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now. So the only question that matters is, are you going to use fear as an excuse or as a map? Because it's already shown you the way. All that's left is for you to decide to walk it. What's the first step you're taking today? Comment here, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. It's time to wake up.